I'm 28 years old, and I live in southern Utah. This happened about 4 years ago, during those early spring days when the mountain roads were still covered in mud. At the time, I was living in a small van I had converted myself, traveling along the Rocky Mountains, taking photos, and living far away from the cities. Being away from people had always made me feel safer. But that night, the opposite happened. Near the Colorado border, I found an old ranger road. It hadn't been active for years, wasn't recommended anywhere online, and was almost completely forgotten. It sat between two tiny towns. On the map, it looked straight, but in reality, it was winding, muddy, and silent. Too silent. At the end of the trail, I found a wide clearing beneath the shadows of giant pine trees. There was no sound anywhere, not even a bird. It felt like the forest was holding its breath. A little ahead, I spotted a rusted fire ring and a toppled picnic table. Strange carvings scratched into the table caught my attention. They didn't look like letters, more like meaningless symbols. When the wind picked up, the table made a faint whistling sound that sent chills down my back. I parked the van. It was late afternoon, snow was falling lightly, and the daylight was fast fading. I walked around for a bit, but the atmosphere of the forest started to unsettle me. No sound, no life. It felt like I had stepped into a world that had been abandoned 10 years ago. I went back inside, turned on the heater, made dinner, and started watching a show. Around 8 p.m., a blizzard had started. The roof shook so hard it sounded like thunder. Then, from the small side window I had left slightly cracked open, a flash of light appeared. Brief. Just a moment, like someone out there had lit something in the darkness, then instantly put it out. It wasn't like a flashlight, more like a spark, but big and powerful. Behind that window there was only forest, and the road I came from wasn't even in that direction. I didn't understand what that light was, or maybe I didn't want to. I tried to go back to my show, but a growing unease settled in me. It felt like beneath the sound of the snowstorm, something else was mixed in. A thin humming, like something was being dragged. Around 11 o'clock, I decided to sleep. I shut everything down in the van and lay in the dark. About an hour later, the sounds outside changed. Someone was walking around the van. The footsteps were clear, heavy, deliberate. You could hear the snow crunching under each step, and with every step, they were circling the van again. I held my breath. Then, right beside the window, almost at the level of my ear, I heard a breath. It was too human to be the wind. Without moving from the bed, I lifted the curtain just a bit. I saw nothing, but I could feel someone standing there. It was an indescribable feeling, the presence of something in the middle of nowhere. Then a scraping sound came from the surface of the glass, slow, with fingertips, tracing along the edge of the window. Suddenly I heard two different whispers. At least two people were out there. I couldn't understand the words, but they sounded like they were arguing, as if they couldn't decide what to do. Then one of them spoke, very close. "There's someone inside." My heart stopped. From the left side of the van came the sound of metal bending. Someone was leaning on the door. Then a dull knock followed. Tap. Another tap. Then a man's voice called out, "Forest Ranger, open the door!" It didn't sound like an officer at all. There was something pleading, impatient, even angry in his tone. The longer I stayed silent, the more irritated he became. I slowly peeked through the curtain. No headlights, no uniform, no ranger truck, just a silhouette in a long black coat. His head slightly tilted, as if he were trying to look inside. He pounded on the sliding door again. Thunk, thunk, thunk. Panicking, I crawled into the driver's seat. The moment I turned the key, someone outside yelled, "Go! He's starting it!" I floored the gas. I got back onto the path I came from. But as I drove away, through the snowstorm, I saw something. At the entrance of the forest, under a tall pine tree, stood 3 people, watching me. None of them moved. When I returned to the town and told the police, the night officer frowned. "That road's been closed for years. There's no ranger out there. No one goes there in winter. There was a missing person case there last month." Then he showed me a photo. The missing man. He was wearing a long black coat, just like the silhouette I saw outside my window. When I returned to the motel and checked my phone, I had a notification from the van's security camera. Motion detected, side door. I opened the footage. Through the snowstorm, someone appeared. I couldn't see his face, but he was leaned in extremely close to the camera and whispered, "We know you." The screen went black. The camera connection was lost. The next morning, when the police and I went back to the van, there were no footprints. The snow was untouched. The camera had no recordings. The memory looked completely empty. But on the right door of the van, on the snow, there were 3 long lines drawn with a finger, as if someone wanted to leave a mark. And those lines, they kept forming again every day. Even when I wiped them away, they were there again the next morning.
In my early 30s, I had a job that required me to travel constantly from state to state. I never stayed in one place for long. Most weeks I'd be in a different state every 3 or 4 days. One winter week in Montana, I finished an assignment earlier than expected and ended up with a full free day. Instead of loafing around at the hotel, I wanted to clear my head a bit. I found an 8-hour mountain trail suggestion on the map, an old mining road. It was one of those forgotten paths nobody really talked about online. The sky was cloudy, but it wasn't snowing. Around 10 a.m., I entered the forest. There wasn't a single person around. It was comforting. About an hour in, I saw someone standing at the edge of the trail. A man, hood wet, hands in his pockets, staring at the ground. I couldn't tell his age. He slowly lifted his head and looked at me. Didn't say a word, just widened his eyes and stared as I walked. And I felt something. Not normal uneasiness. It felt like he knew me somehow. I lowered my gaze and kept walking as if nothing was wrong. He didn't speak. About 30 minutes later, I got hungry. I sat on a rotting log beside the trail and pulled out some snacks. Less than a minute passed when, through the trees ahead, the same man appeared, walking straight toward me. His footsteps made a strange dragging sound on the muddy ground. I shoved everything back into my bag. By the time I looked up again, he was already close. I hoped he would pass by, but he stopped right in front of me, so close I could hear his breathing. He took a wallet out of his pocket. "You dropped this," he said. His voice was off, monotone, like a rehearsed line. The wallet wasn't mine, and it looked old, wet, and muddy. "That's not mine," I said. He stared directly into my eyes. For 3 seconds that felt like minutes, I couldn't tell if his gaze held hatred, anger, or something else entirely. Then he repeated the same sentence. "This is yours. You need to take it." It wasn't a request. It was an order. My hand lifted involuntarily. I took the wallet. A meaningless smile spread across his face. "Good," he said. Then he turned around and walked away. But the way he walked wasn't normal. One foot dragged across the ground, as if one leg didn't match the other. That was the moment I decided, I'm going back. I'm not finishing this hike. The light was fading. The return trip would take at least 2.5 hours. Every 5 minutes, I checked behind me. Nothing there, but that feeling crept in, like someone was watching me between the trees. Finally, my car came into view. But at that exact moment, a wave of cold washed through my body. Behind the car, right next to the rear tire, was a crouched silhouette. Still, motionless, barely even breathing. The more I slowed, the more it felt like he was slowing too. Run? No chance. The last thing I wanted was for whoever that was to chase me through the woods. I moved sideways, deciding to enter the car through the passenger side. I stepped carefully, trying to muffle my footsteps in the mud. I reached the passenger door, opened it, got in. And that's when the crouching figure launched up from the ground. The man sprinted toward the driver's door. His eyes were bloodshot. It was the same man from the trail. He tried to yank the door open. I locked it. He started pounding on the window and screaming, "Give it back! Give me the wallet back!" But his voice wasn't what you would expect. Not human. Deep, guttural, broken, like a corrupted recording played through damaged speakers. I climbed into the driver's seat and started the engine. He was still beating on the glass. The window looked like it might crack. I floored it. The car slipped in the mud but caught traction, and I sped down the path. In the rearview mirror, I saw him run back into the trees. But his run wasn't human. His body swayed side to side unnaturally, as if his joints were in the wrong places. I went straight to the police. I turned in the wallet, told them everything. The officer opened it. The wallet was completely empty, except for some water-smeared writing inside. A short note. "Let the next one find it." The officer looked at me. "No one's been hiking here for weeks. A farmer reported seeing someone strange on this trail last month. Said half his face was bruised and swollen, like he'd survived some kind of accident." That night at the hotel, when I called a friend, I realized my hands were shaking. Why was the wallet empty? Why did the man choose me? And most importantly, who was the wallet really meant for? Ever since that day, I always carry a small knife when I hike. But sometimes at night, when the wind hits my window, I swear I can hear the muddy breath of that bruised-faced man all over again.
For the past few years, I'd made it a habit to escape the city every now and then for short nature getaways. I usually did 2-night solo camping trips. They cleared my head and gave me a break from the crowds. This story happened last year, during the last week of May, in a remote national forest near the Wyoming border. My plan was simple: hike 6 hours to reach Moonridge Lake, a place so remote that it didn't even appear on most maps. I'd found it mentioned in an old forum post. People said no one went there because the route was too difficult. That made it even more appealing. I parked my car at 7 a.m. and started hiking. The weather was clear, the forest silent, the trail nearly invisible. I liked that kind of solitude. Around the 4th hour, I caught movement behind a large boulder on my right. When I lifted my head, someone darted out of sight. At first, I thought it was just my eyes playing tricks on me, but my feet stopped on their own. I really had seen someone, and there was supposed to be no one else on this route. I waited a bit, listened, but the forest remained completely silent. Probably just a deer, I told myself, and kept walking. When I finally saw the lake, it genuinely took my breath away. Completely silent, completely alone, like a black mirror hidden between the trees. I set up camp on a flat area near the lake, tucked between thick trees. I had just finished pitching my tent when I saw someone across the lake. He had no backpack, no gear. He was just standing at the water's edge, completely still, staring at me. I raised my hand to wave, but he didn't react. A moment later, he stepped back into the trees and disappeared. For the first time, a ripple of unease went through me. Who hikes all the way out here with nothing at all? When night fell, I started a small fire. I was tense, but I tried to reason with myself. Maybe he's just another solo camper. The forest was disturbingly quiet. I tried reading a book, but that crawling sensation of being watched kept spreading through my body. It felt like the darkness of the forest was slowly creeping into the campsite. I eventually shut the book and stood up, unable to focus. And in that exact second, my heart nearly stopped. Right at the edge of the firelight, where the darkness began, a silhouette stood. The same man. About 50 feet away, standing perfectly still in the darkness. I couldn't see his face, but I could feel his eyes locked on me. Before I could move, he began walking backward, not turning around, just stepping back, eyes still fixed on me, slowly fading into the darkness, like the forest swallowed him whole. In that moment, I knew one thing for certain. His presence wasn't a coincidence. He had come for me. I threw more wood on the fire. I didn't sleep at all that night. Every little crack made me flinch. Sometimes between the trees across the fire, I saw something shift, like a shadow. Every time I looked directly, there was nothing. But I knew someone was there. At sunrise, I packed up immediately. Didn't eat, didn't drink, just started walking. As I made my way out of the forest, I heard a branch snap behind me. I froze. Listened. Another snap. Then another. Soft. Careful. As if someone was mimicking my footsteps. I couldn't bring myself to turn around. I just walked faster. Eventually, the sound stopped. Maybe he'd fallen behind, maybe he'd stopped. I had no idea. By the time I reached the parking area, my knees were shaking. Seeing my car brought some relief, but just as I opened the door, a sound came from the deep forest. This time, it was unmistakable. Someone breathing. I didn't dare look. I threw myself into the car, locked the doors, and started the engine. When I checked the mirror, my skin turned cold. There he was, standing among the trees in the shadow of the forest, not hiding anymore. For the first time, I saw his face clearly. Dry, sunken, pale skin. But worst of all were his eyes, red, swollen, wide open, like someone who hadn't slept in days. I drove off and didn't stop until the forest was far behind me. I reported the incident to the police. When they heard the name Moonridge Lake, their expressions changed. People say someone lives out there, one officer said. For years. But no one's ever found him. They added one more sentence. We've had reports of someone watching campers, but no one's ever been able to get close. I haven't gone on a solo camping trip since, and I don't think I ever will. Because sometimes, just before I fall asleep, I can still hear those footsteps echoing in my mind. And one thought never leaves me. If I had woken up just a little later that morning, how close had that man gotten to my tent?